Hey guys, we're gonna back with the BFG to find out what happens in, I think it's chapter 11. I hate that the chapters aren't numbered, but it's Journey to the Dream Country. After a mad frog scuttle party was over, Sophie settled herself again on the top of the enormous table. You is feeling better now? Asked the big friendly giant. Much better, thank you, Sophie said. Whenever I was feeling a bit scrawny, said the BFG. A few glollops of frog scuttle is always making me scotchy again. I must say, it's quite an experience, Sophie said. It's a raz twizzler, said the BFG. It's a gloriumtious. And he turned away and strode across the cave and picked up his dream-catching net. I is galloping off now, he said, to catch some more wopsy-whiffling dreams for my collection. I is doing this every day without missing. Is you wishing to come with me? I is snuggling you very cozy in the pocket of my waistcoat, the BFG said. Then no one is seeing you. Before Sophie could protest, she had picked her up off the table and popped her into the waistcoat pocket. There was plenty of room in there. Is you wishing for a little hole to peep out from? He asked her. There's one here already, she said. She had found a small hole in the pocket, and when she put one eye close to it, she could see very well indeed. She watched the BFG as he bent down and filled his suitcase, with empty jars. He closed the lid, picked up the case in one hand, and took the pole with the net in the other hand, and marched towards the entrance to the cave. As soon as he was outside, the BFG set off across the great hot yellow wasteland, where the blue rocks lay and the dead trees stood, and where all the other giants were sulking about. Sophie, squatting low on her heels in the pocket of the leather waistcoat, had one eye glued on the little hole. She saw the group of enormous giants about 300 yards ahead. Hold your breaths, the BFG whispered down to her. Cross your figglers. Here we go. We is going right past all these other giants. Is you seeing that whooping great one, the one nearest to us? I see him, Sophie whispered back, quivering. That is the horriblest of them all, and the biggest of them all. He is called the flesh lump-eating giant. I don't want to hear about him, Sophie said. He is 54 feet high, said the BFG softly as he jogged along, and he is swallowing human beings like they is sugar lumps, 2 or 3 at a time. You're making me nervous, Sophie said. I is nervous myself, the BFG whispered. I is always gets as jumpy as a jog hopper when the flesh lump-eating giant is around. Keep away from him, Sophie pleaded. Not possible, the BFG answered. He is galloping easily 2 times as quickly as me. Shall we turn back? Sophie said. Turning back is worse, the BFG said. If they is seeing me running away, they is all giving chase and throwing rocks. They would never eat you, though, would they? Sophie asked. Giants is never guzzling other giants, the BFG said. They is fighting and squirreling a lot with each other, but never guzzling. Human beings is more tasty to them. The giants had already spotted the BFG, and all heads were turned, watching him as he jogged forward. He was aiming to pass well into the right of the group. Through her little peephole, Sophie saw the flesh lump-eating giant moving over to intercept them. He didn't hurry. He just lopped over casually to point where the BFG would have to pass. The others looped after him. Sophie counted 9 of them together, and she recognized the blood blotter in the middle of them. They were bored. They had nothing to do until nightfall, and there was an air of menace about them as they looped slowly across the big plain with long, looping strides, heading for the BFG. Here comes the runty one, boomed the flesh lump eater. Ho, ho, there, runty one. Where is your splash winkling away to in such a hefty hurry? He shot out an enormous arm and grabbed the BFG by the hair. The BFG didn't struggle. He simply stopped and stood quite still and said, Be so kind as to be letting go of my hair, flesh lump eater. The flesh lump eater released him and stepped back a pace. The other giants stood around waiting for the fun to start. Now then, you little gob squibbler, boomed the flesh lump eater. We is all of us wanting to know where you is galloping off to every day in the daytime. Nobody ought to be galloping off to anywhere until it is getting dark. The human beings could easily be spotting you and starting a giant hunt, and we is not wanting that to happen, is we not? We is not, shouted the other giants. Go back to your cave, Runty One. I is not galloping to any human being country, the BFG said. I is going to other places. I is thinking, said the flesh lump eater, that you is catching human beings and keeping them as pets. Right you is, cried the blood blotter. Just now I am hearing him chittering away to one of them in his cave. You is welcome to go and search my cave from frack to brunt, the BFG answered. You can go looking into every crook and nanny. There is no human beans or stringy beans or runnier beans or jelly beans or any other beans in there. Sophie crouched, still as a mouse, inside the BFG's pocket. She had hardly dared breathe. She was terrified she might sneeze. The slightest sound or movement would give her away. Through the tiny peephole, she watched the giants cluster around the poor BFG. How revolting they were! All of them had piggy little eyes and enormous mouths with thick sausage lips. When the flesh lump eater was speaking, she got a glimpse of his tongue. It was jet black. Like the slab of black steak, every one of them was more than twice as tall as the BFG. Suddenly, the flesh lump eater shot out two enormous hands and grabbed the BFG around the waist. He tossed him high in the air and shouted, "Catch him, man-hugger!" The man-hugger caught him. The other giants spread out quickly in a large circle, each giant about 20 yards from his neighbor, preparing for the game they were going to play. Now the man-hugger threw the BFG high and far, shouting, "Catch him, Bone Cruncher!" The Bone Cruncher ran forward and caught the tumbling BFG and immediately swung him up again. "Catch him, child chewer," he shouted. And so it went. The giants were playing ball with the BFG, vying with each other to see who could throw him the highest. Sophie dug her nails in the sides of his pocket, trying to prevent herself from tumbling out. When she was upside down, she felt as though she were in a barrel going over the Niagara Falls. And all the time, there was the fearful danger that one of the giants would fail to catch the BFG, and he'd go crashing to the ground. "Catch him, meat drippler! Catch him, gizzard gobbler! Catch him, maid masher! Catch him, blood blotter! Catch him, catch him, catch him!" In the end, they got bored with this game. They dumped the poor BFG on the ground. He was dazed and shattered. They gave him a few kicks and shouted, "Run, you little runt! Let's see how fast you is galloping." The BFG ran. What else could he do? The giants picked up rocks and hurled them after him. He managed to dodge them. "Rooty little runt!" they shouted. "Trudgy little twit! Shivery little shrimp! Mucky little midget!" They are not very kind. "Squaggly little squib! Grubby little grub!" At last, the BFG got clear of them, and in another couple of minutes, the pack of giants was out of sight over the horizon. Sophie popped her head out from the pocket. "I didn't like that," she said. "Phew," said BFG. "Few and far between. They was in a nasty, crotchety mood today, was they not? I is sorry you was having such a whirligig time." "No worse than you," said Sophie. "Would they ever really hurt you?" "I isn't ever trusting them," the BFG said. "How do they actually catch the humans they eat?" Sophie asked. They is usually just sticking an arm in through the bedroom window and snitching them from their beds," the BFG said. "Like you did to me?" But I isn't eating you," the BFG said. "How else do they catch them?" Sophie asked. "Sometimes," the BFG said, "they is swimming in the sea like fishes with only their hands showing above the water. Then out comes a big hairy hand and grabbles someone off the beach." "Children as well?" "Often children," the BFG said. "Little children who is building sandcastles on the beach. That is who the swimming ones are after. Little children is not so tough to eat as an old grandma." So says the child-chewing giant. As they talked, the BFG was galloping fast over the land. Sophie was standing right up in his waistcoat pocket now and holding onto the edge with both hands. Her head and shoulders were in the open and the wind was blowing in her hair. "How else do they catch people?" she asked. "All of them is having their own special ways of catching a human being," the BFG said. "The meat-dripping giant is preferred to pretend he is a big tree growing in the park. He is standing in the park in the dusky evening, and he is holding great branches over his head, and there he is waiting until some happy families is coming to have a picnic under the spreading tree. Meat-dripping giant is watching them, and they lay out their little picnic, but in the end, it is a meat-drippler who is having a picnic." "It's too awful," Sophie cried. "The gizzard-gobbling giant is a city lover, the BFG went on. The gizzard gobbler is lying high up between the roofs of the houses of the big cities. He is lying there snugly as a stingler and watching the human beings walking on the street below. When he sees one that looks like it's a whoopsie good flavor, he grabs it. He is simply reaching down and snitching it off the street like a monkey taking a nut. He says it is nice to be able to pick and choose what you is having for your supper. He says it's like choosing from a menu. Don't people see him doing it? Sophie asked. Never is they seeing him. Do not forget it is dusky dark at this time. Also, the gizzard gobbler has a very fast arm. His arm is going up and down quicker than Squinkers. But if all these people are disappearing every night, surely there's some sort of outcry, Sophie said. The world is a whooping big place, the BFG said. It has 100 different countries. The Giants is clever. They is careful not to be skid-diddling off to the same country too often. They is always switch-fiddling around. Even so, Sophie said. Do not forget, the BFG said. The human beings is disappearing everywhere, all the time, even without the Giants is guzzling them up. Human beings is killing each other as much quicker than the Giants is doing it. But they don't eat each other, Sophia said. Giants isn't eating each other either, the BFG said, nor is Giants killing each other. Giants is not a very lovely, but they is not killing each other, nor is the crocodile-dillies killing other crocodile-dillies, nor is the pussycats killing other pussycats. They kill mice, Sophie said. Ah, but they is not killing their own kind, the BFG said. Human beings is the only animal that is killing their own kind. Don't poisonous snakes kill each other? Sophie asked. She was searching desperately for another creature that behaved as badly as the human. Even poisonous snakes is never killing each other, the BFG said. Nor is the most fearsome creatures like tigers and rhinoceros. None of them is ever killing their own kind. Has you ever thought about that? Sophie kept silent. I is not understanding human beings at all, the BFG said. You is a human being, and you is saying it is a grisling and horrigus for giants to be eating human beings, right or left? Right, Sophie said. But human beings is squishing each other all the time, the BFG said. They is shooting guns and going up in aeroplanes to drop their bombs on each other's heads every week. Human beings is always killing other human beings. He was right. Of course he was right, and Sophie knew it. She was beginning to wonder whether human beings were actually any better than giants. Even so, said Sophie, defending her own race, I think it is rotten that those foul giants should go off every night to eat humans. Humans have never done anything to them any harm. That is what the little piggy wiggy is saying every day, the BFG answered. He is saying, I has never done any harm to the human beings, so why should he be eating me? Oh dear, Sophie said. The human beings is making rules to suit themselves, the BFG went on, but the rules they is making do not suit the little piggy wigglies. Am I right or left? Right, said Sophie. Giants is also making rules. Their rules is not suiting the human beings. Everybody is making their own rules to suit himself. But you don't like it that those beastlies are eating humans every night, do you? Sophie asked. I do not, the BFG answered firmly. One right is not making two lefts. Is you quite cozy down there in my pocket? I'm fine, said Sophie. Then, suddenly, once again, the BFG went to the magical top gear of his. He began hurtling forward with phenomenal leaps. His speed was unbelievable. The landscapes became blurred again, and Sophie had to duck down on the whistling gate to save her head from being blown off her shoulders. She crouched in the pocket and listened to the wind screaming past. It came knifing in through the tiny peephole in the pocket and whooshed around her like a hurricane. But this time the BFG didn't stay in top gear long. It seemed as though he had some barrier to cross, a vast mountain perhaps, or an ocean or a great desert. But having crossed it, once again he slowed down to his normal gallop, and Sophie was able to pop her head up and look out once more at the view. She noticed immediately that they were now in an altogether paler country. The sun had disappeared above the film of vapor, and the air becoming cooler every minute. The land was flat and treeless, and there seemed to be no color in it at all. Every minute the mist became thicker, the air became colder still, and everything became paler and paler, until soon there was nothing but gray and white all around them. They were in a country of swirling mist and ghostly vapors. There was some sort of grass underfoot, but it was not green. It was an ashy gray. There was no sign of a living creature, and no sound at all, except for the soft thud of the BFG's footsteps as he hurtled on through the fog. Suddenly he stopped. We is here at last, he announced. He bent down and lifted Sophie from his pocket and put her on the ground. She was still in her nightie and her feet were bare. She shivered and stared around her in the swirling mist and the ghostly vapors. "Where are we?" she asked. "We is in dream country." The BFG said, "This is where the dreams is beginning." I wonder what's going to happen in dream country. We'll find out next time. I hope you enjoy. Bye, guys.